In every leaf a universe, in every verse a unity of leaves and trees and mysteries. Oh, who knows what it means? In every leaf a universe, in every verse a unity of leaves and trees and mysteries. Oh, who knows what it means? I am sitting in your shade, filled with gratitude for every leaf you've made. The sun is shining bright today, so I'll rest a while and soon I'll be on my way. In every leaf a universe, in every verse a unity of leaves and trees and mysteries. Oh, who knows what it means? I read futures in their veins, simply telling me that life always finds a way, until I am back home again. I will sit here in wonder, learning how to pray. In every leaf a universe, in every verse a unity of leaves and trees and mysteries. Oh, who knows what it means? Can it mean what it seems? I am all that I have seen. Hello and welcome back to We Are Already Free. I'm very excited to be here with you today, and this is a live stream recording for any of you who are struggling with making decisions. Have you ever had that feeling where you've got a big decision to make, or maybe multiple big decisions to make, and yet you feel frozen and you get stuck, and no matter what you do, you just can't seem to turn in the right direction? What if I make the wrong decision? What if there's a bigger one coming ahead? How do I deal with this? How do I navigate this? Fortuitously, you're in exactly the right place, because today we are joined by Dr. Angela Williams Gorrell, who will speak and who is a speaker and consultant about finding the life worth living, open to joy, courageously navigating complex choices. She has taught at several schools, including Yale and Baylor University. She hosts the More Human with Dr. Angela podcast. I love that title. She is the author of 3 books, including a brand new book, Braving Difficult Decisions: What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And I really feel like I could have done with this book in my life many years ago, and I'm sure that I will need to refer to it many times going forward. But you're in the right place if you are wanting to dive deep in how to move forward when you're stuck between choices, finding clarity when everything feels foggy, and turning decision paralysis into confident action. So all I can say is I'm just super excited to have you here. It's an absolute pleasure, and I really need this episode. And if you're watching right now, I imagine that you do too. And if you're listening right now, the same. So thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure, and welcome back to We Are Already Free, the podcast where we help highly sensitive change makers, conscious misfits, and the wonderful weirdos of the world to remember that we are already free, we're rad, and the world needs the gifts that we are here to bring. So please enjoy. It's good to be here with you. When you hear the words, we are already free, what comes up for you?
Acceptance.
Change.
A shift in awareness.
Human beings are so powerful.
There's so much more.
Everything is love behind it.
Breaking the chains of your own mind.
That which remains.
Nature.
Getting out of the matrix.
We're sitting on the treasure and it's already unlocked.
We are already free.
You're free.
You are a walking map.
Have always been free.
You are always free, already free.
We are already free.
Yay, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really stoked to be here. I love the name of this podcast, and I'm eager to jump into discussion with you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry about the volume on that last bit. I did not realize how loud that would be. I think it must have just possibly caused you some eardrum damage.
It wasn't very loud on my end.
Oh, wasn't it? Okay, I'm glad. That's good news then.
No,
I'm glad.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, thanks for coming on. I really could not think of a book that I feel more aligned with in terms of just the title alone, because I feel like so much of my energy in my life is spent thinking about not just the decisions that I need to make, but the decisions I have made of like screwing up, basically. Like I've made some very, very bad decisions in my life. And I'm curious to know, as we get started, has there ever been a time in your life where making the wrong decision turned out to be the right thing in the end? Like, and maybe not, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I think that I tend to be someone who thinks about failure in a way that like failure is knowledge. My friend Jasmine Bellamy, she was on my podcast a number of weeks ago, and I loved the way that she put this, that all failure becomes an opportunity. It's data. That's what she said. It's data. And I really resonate with that. So I think that any failure becomes an opportunity to figure out the next way forward. It becomes a teacher if we allow it to. So for me, I don't know that I look back at any decision and just say, "Oh, that was so awful that it took me down the wrong path." It just took me down a path, and I may like the path more than this path that I've taken, but I can't change it. And so rumination is something that absolutely used to rule my life. I used to be someone, I think, before writing this book, before the last couple of years of really trying to heal emotionally as a person, not just from recent decisions, but just heal more as an emotionally in my life, that I've really made an effort to let go of regret and rumination and and live freer from the past.
Well, that's an interesting one. I'm curious around that idea of rumination and regret. I think of the story of the top 5 regrets of the dying. One of them, the top one, I think, being like, I wish I'd lived more true to myself, and then wish I'd hung out with my friends more, all those kinds of things. And so regret seems to be potentially something that we will have to face up until the end of our days. And I think that, tell us the secret. If you like, what have you done, or what has there been a specific shift that you've gone through that's enabled you to move from rumination and regret into a state of more freedom for yourself?
One of the chapters in my book is called Shedding. And this was because I think a really important step when I asked people what makes difficult decisions difficult for you. That was part of the research that I did for this book. One of the top answers was, I made a bad decision in the past and I regret it, and now I don't trust myself to make good decisions, period. And so I realized, part of the journey toward making a brave, difficult decision is this step of shedding. It's realizing there might be something I need to let go of in order to keep moving forward. And so many of us, we walk around with a backpack on. My sister Steph talks about this in relationship to grief. I think it also can be failure, regret, etc. That, so we walk around with this heaviness sometimes, and maybe we just need to take some of the stuff out of our backpack and leave it and say, this is what it is. And so I think an important aspect of this journey is saying, is there something that I need to let go of, that I need to offer to God to say, I need you to take this from me. I think when we actively let things go, and it can look like a lot of different things. One, there is a very bodily way of letting go that I like, which is finding a body of water out in nature, whether that's a lake or a pond or the ocean, depending on where you live, finding a body of water and finding some rocks around that water, or taking your own rock and naming the rock or several rocks, the stuff that you need to let go of, and actively throwing those things into a body of water and saying, I release this. I don't want to hold on to this anymore in my life. It could also look like writing a letter to a person and saying, and then safely burning that letter and saying, I don't want to hold on to this hurt that I feel, this situation that we went through. So letting go can look like different things for different people, and sometimes it's a process. And so sometimes you might need to do this every morning for a number of mornings until you really start to feel yourself release it. But it could look like every morning in your morning meditation time, I name that I don't want to carry this anymore. I release it. I let it go. And I do think over time that we are able to truly shed things when we do these sorts of practices.
It's interesting that you went that route. In my mind, I don't know, definitely didn't have an expectation, but it's so beautiful to hear you speak to nature in that way and to this capacity of the earth to hold the things we can't anymore. Because I've actually written, so I'm a musician, and one of the songs I wrote some years ago after a very powerful few experiences with breath work and with plant medicines when I was in a very dark space, and it really, really helped. And the first line of this song says, is this world big enough to hold the tears I've yet to shed? I'm not through yet, I'm not through yet, but I know she can't stand the weight of all we've left unsaid. What's unexpressed weighs down into the depths. And I'm thinking of what you just shared there, and how in some, even the plant medicine ceremonies that I'm a part of that have been so big in my own life, that often the message people will remind it beforehand is like, if there's something coming up that's too big for you, give it to the fire. Like really, like actually rub your arms and give it off. Let that energy go back to the fire. Let it go to the earth. Let it go back. You don't need it anymore. So what you said really touched me in that way. I'm so grateful for that.
Oh, that's a beautiful, those lines to that song is so beautiful. I really, I connect with that. And I think you're right. There is this healing capacity that the earth has, that nature has, that even when we live in an urban landscape, we can get in touch with.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I love that. What a beautiful beginning. That's fantastic. And how was your own, because as with anything, no one writes a book about something without having some very deep personal experiences or motivations for doing so. So was there a time, or when was the time when you really realized that decision making or hard decisions, the way that you were doing or that you saw society doing it, etc., is kind of broken? And how was that process in your own life of going through that?
One more thing about nature that I wanted to bring up that is
Please.
related to the question you just had too, is when I was thinking, I think sometimes we can think of shedding as only a bad thing, that I have to let go of this and so it can feel, but when I look at nature, we do see that everything in nature sheds, everything in nature in order to keep moving forward. This is, it's a part of life. And so one thing that that really struck me once was like thinking about snakes shedding their skin and realizing they not only do this to grow, but in my research, I realized that there are parasites that get into their skin. And when they shed their skin, it helps them to be healthier. And, so that was really, it was like, oh yeah. So sometimes, we need to shed and let go in order to be healthier, more whole beings in our lives.
You have
And
no
I think
idea.
that really,
Before you continue, I just want to say, you have no idea how many times I'm going to tell that story of that is such a cool addition to this shedding its skin story of snakes. So anyway, please
I
continue.
know.
That's rad.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. In my own life, I think the difficult decisions that I've made in looking back, the ones that I feel best about, that I am able to keep moving forward the most clearly, it's like that almost give me an energy to keep moving forward, are the ones where I feel like I let go of some really unhealthy aspects of life. But yeah, I think that in writing this book, so part of it was when I was going through my own difficult decisions, and the two that really shaped this journey that I share in this book. One was the decision to get divorced, and the other was the decision to walk away from tenure at a Research One university here in the United States. And for anyone who's not familiar with the academy, it's sort of the ultimate uh, way to be to keep your job, and it's the ultimate promotion. That's the word I'm looking for. And so it's sort of a unicorn job too these days. It's really difficult to become a professor, period, because there's just so few jobs. But then to get a tenure track position and then to be up for tenure and to be, for me, I was all but guaranteed tenure. It's a really difficult decision to walk away from because it's a job that promises things like stability that for many of us are really important, including me. And so I was trying to make these decisions, and they were similar to the same time, kind of back to back for sure. And I was looking for a book, I think, that would feel like I had a spiritual director in front of me, a really good friend in front of me that was like, do this and then do that and then try this. And I wasn't able really to find that kind of book. I found several books that were quite practical, like the 5 questions you should ask when you make a difficult decision, that were helpful and practical. And then books that were really spiritual, but pretty esoteric. Like it felt like very elusive, just a little woo woo, like maybe this, and I was like, okay, I wish that the practical books were a bit more spiritual. I wish the spiritual books were more practical. I wish there was a journey and I was like, what if I did some research and created a journey? And so that's what I did. And really, this book is the integration of 3 major strands of research. One was that I read these books on discernment and decision making. And that's what I really wanted there to be, this practice. That's when I say the woo-woo books, I just mean books that take seriously the action or the practice of discernment over time. Like throughout history, people have really engaged in this action or this practice of I'm trying to discern, which is, I think, a deeper decision making. I'm not just trying to make the decision, I'm really trying to figure out the thing that leads to the most wholeness. And then, so that was one strain of research, books on decision making and discernment. I looked at those and I tried to integrate the best of those things, those books that I read, into this process. The second was that I interviewed people who have made difficult decisions. And 7 of their stories appear in the book, but I drew from all of them. And I also did some, surveys online and really try to figure out what people really needed help with, what had helped them along the way. And I integrated that into the journey. And then the final strand of research was that I read autobiographies and biographies of people throughout history that have made difficult decisions from like the 1100s to now. And I was trying to figure out what helped them to be bold. What did, how did they do what they did? And all of that came together to make up this journey.
Wow, that is such a beautiful combination of strands and threads to weave together into this. I guess for anyone listening, there's obviously going to be this question around, okay, well, I have some difficult decisions to make. And obviously they should read your book, of course. But then is there something in this moment that really, like, when someone, maybe they even have a decision right now, or they've made decisions in the past and they weren't sure why it felt so hard or why it felt like it didn't go the way they'd hoped, etc. Is there kind of a foundational similarity amongst those different stories that you gathered along the way that is an indicator for all of us in how to make those decisions courageously and make them in a way that aligns with that wholeness that you spoke to?
Yeah. I think when we're able to really get in touch with ourselves, when we're able, and I think this is the hardest part of making a difficult decision, is carving out enough time in our day to really give ourselves the opportunity to listen to our souls talking to us. And I think the best time of the day to do that is in the morning time. And that's because we get decision fatigue as the day goes on. We make just, you may not realize it, but we make decisions all day long. What do I wear? What do I eat? How am I getting to work? Which paths am I taking? Who am I talking to? What do I want to say in this meeting? I mean, we make decisions all day long. And so by the time that we get to the nighttime, our brains are very tired. So I would encourage you, if you're trying to make a difficult decision, to carve out some space in the morning time, even if that means getting up 30 minutes earlier while you're trying to make this decision. 2, I encourage you to realize that when you haven't actually made the decision, that you're in a liminal space. It's okay. Try not to be scared in the liminal space. Just thinking about making a difficult decision hasn't done anything. I think sometimes people they feel a stirring within, which is chapter 1, and they're scared to even acknowledge it. But you don't have to be afraid to acknowledge the stirring within. You haven't made a decision yet. So just let yourself be unsure. And then the thing that I got from all these people throughout history, the number one thing is that all of them could not do what they felt led to do. They couldn't not do it. It was so, they were so compelled by the decision that they felt called to. They couldn't not do it.
Mm. Was there something that you noticed that drove them to that? Because there's so many of us in the world who have an idea of like, oh, well, I really want to do this thing. I want to make this decision. Mm-hmm. No. But then there's a lot of stuff that goes by. A lot of people end up in regret, as we've talked about. Right. So is there something there that you noticed?
Yeah, so it was the listening, and specifically the listening to their most deeply held values. There are a number of books, like my best friend wrote a book called Strong Women Lift Each Other Up. And in her book, she has a values exercise. There are a number of books that have values exercises. My book does too. But you could even Google it today. And when you find a list of values, sort of possible values in the world to live by, I think that, and then you do a values exercise where you narrow down from this list 5 values that you hold really dear, and then maybe 3. But so that's one way. A lot of people, I think I encourage you to do that just period, for the kind of person that you are, to have more clarity about, oh yeah, these are really guiding values in my life. But specifically related to the decision that you're making right now, there are probably some of those values that you're feeling really drawn to in relationship to this choice. And I think it's important to get clarity on the values that are guiding you right now, or that should be. And the way that we do that, I think, is by asking ourselves, and I've been hinting at it all along the way, but I think sometimes that we make decisions, we think that pros and cons list are really related to money or time, like our resources. What's going to get me the most respect from other people? What's going to help, me to, it's usually, a lot of times it's related to things like that. But really, underneath really difficult decisions is our most deeply held values. And so difficult decisions are not so much about the things I just mentioned. I think the way that we move forward is by figuring out what leads to wholeness. What helps me to live a less divided life? That's what I mean by that. What leads to peace, to serenity? What leads to flourishing for me as a human, for like the community that I'm a part of? And then also, what leads to me feeling like I'm contributing to a story that's larger than myself? So, I don't mean peace always. It doesn't always feel good. That's one of the biggest takeaways that I had too from these people, was like, oftentimes for them, good decisions didn't feel good. The good decisions that they made were about something. It was about like, I'm living for something larger than myself. I'm living more, for others too. This sense that I'm living toward wholeness, toward peace, was like, is because I value deeply the community that I'm a part of. and I want to honor them, you know? And then also another thing you could ask is, what decision leads to healing for me, for the community that I'm a part of, for the world? And when we begin to not do pros and cons lists, but to ask these sort of the bigger questions, I think it helps us to get a sense of what we can't avoid not doing, what we absolutely must do.
Yeah.
Does that help, Nathan? Or
Oh,
what do you, when
definitely.
I talk about that, what comes up for you when I say those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense to me. It's removing, because that was one of the things I was going to ask you about, is like this, which you obviously know, is the decision-making matrix, and this idea of like urgent, important, not urgent, important, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very like clean cut. Well, this is the thing you do immediately. This is the thing you delegate. This is and it's never really completely resonated with me, I'll be honest. I mean, I am kind of, I don't know, I'm different to many people in many ways, but I found myself struggling with that way of making decisions. But what you just said, if I'm clear on my value system and I'm really clear on like what are the things that I absolutely am living for, and interestingly, it's reminding me of something. I won't go into detail because it's not something I really talk about publicly, but there's a service that I want to do that's not about money or who knows about it, all the rest of it, but that I haven't been doing for a while because we were living away, and I've come back and there's a lot going on in my life right now. We're going to have our first kids soon. We've moved into a new place. And I've been called in by this service-based organization. They've asked me to kind of up. They're like, hey, you back? Would you come and do this thing that would be really helpful for us? And I'm like, oof, that's a lot of hours. It's only, twice a month, but it's a lot of, it's basically a whole day, twice a month in my week when I've got a lot going on right now. And I was wrestling with it for a while, and I just kind of reached a point. I actually feel a bit emotional talking about it, but I just reached a point where I realized like, this is who I am. If I don't do this, then I am denying who I really am. And that would be more painful than anything else. And so I'm actually starting this Thursday as my first day working with them again and volunteering there. And so hearing you speak connected me to that story, basically, that I'm making the decision not because it's the easiest thing, not because it's going to help me feel more comfortable, not because it's like it's going to show the world how great I am or anything like that. It's just because this is who I am, and if I don't do this, then some part of me dies. So yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely. And you feel that way. I think you probably sensed if I go in this direction of saying no, I'm going to feel divided. I'm not going to feel peace. I'm not going to feel that there's going to be something lacking. And if I go in this direction, even if I'm uncomfortable, even if this makes this part of my life a little bit more constricted and this and that, I'm going to feel like I'm living true to who I'm called to be. And
Exactly.
and I'm going to be, And so the other thing I want to say, to go back to regret, when I say it's data, I don't mean that it's just, oh, I should have done this and now I know that.
All right.
What it could be is, oh, before I didn't live for this value, before I denied this aspect of who I am, now I know that. How now do I live toward this thing that I know to be true about myself? How now how do I take this thing that was so important to me that maybe I denied at the time, maybe my own healing, and then how do I make this next decision for the sake of that and not deny that part of myself?
Yeah, it's almost like by doing so, we redeem the past through our actions in the present.
Yes, 100%.
Beautiful. I'd love to kind of turn it back towards you in a little more personal way, if you're open to it. And you shared there's those two big, hard decisions. The one about, was it tenure, is it called? And the other about divorce. And either one, whichever feels more aligned for you, but to share your own process, because now I know that those decisions both had something to do with who you really are and your value system and what you needed to align with so that you could be more yourself, more authentically you. So I don't know which of those is calling you in this moment, but I'd love to hear more of that story and that process that you must have gone through to make such big decisions.
I think both of them had to do with needing to do some true healing in my life. And not just for the sake of me, hopefully, but for the sake of who I'm called to be in the world. I was living as a very unhealed person, not just because of um, those two things, like being in a marriage, like a particular marriage, or being in a particular environment work-wise. But now looking back, I can look at just a number of experiences that I had throughout my life and realize I was emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically depleted. And in order to pursue healing in my life in all of those ways, holistic healing and wellness, I needed to let go of both of those things. And I think the hardest thing, for anyone listening who is considering whether they should stay or go in their relationship or stay or go in the job that they have, I don't think that anyone can tell you what to do other than your own heart. I will say to you, if you listen closely to your own soul, I do think that you will ultimately feel what you need to do. The kind of people that I would surround myself with, if you're listening right now, are not people who want to solve this for you or who want to tell you what to do or even what they would do if they were you. They're people who, what I call in the book, there are supporting people, asserting people, prying people, and ghosting type people. Supporting people in your life, the number one characteristic of a supportive person is that they know how to ask you open-ended questions. They know how, and then to listen to you, which helps you to listen to your own heart. And so a closed-ended question is like a multiple choice question. Is it A, B, or C? An open-ended question is it's marked by curiosity. I wonder about this. What do you think when I talk about, like, what comes up for you when I say this word? When you think about stability, what does that really mean to you? When, as you think about the last few years and the hard things that you've been experiencing in relationship to this, what comes up for you? As you imagine 5 years from now and the best possible scenario. A lot of times when we're thinking about difficult decisions, we think about the worst case scenario. And I do think that we need to be prepared. Like, one of the ways you can calm yourself is to imagine issues that could come up with relationship to this decision and then prepare for that. If this happens, I will do X. That's helpful to you. It's not helpful to just ruminate on all the ways that this could go poorly. But then if you're going to ruminate, if you're going to imagine this going really beautifully. What does that look like? That's a supportive person in your life. The second characteristic of a supportive person is that they trust you. They trust you to know what you need, what you want. They trust that whatever your experience has been is your experience. They trust you to know your own life. And then the third characteristic of a supportive person is no matter what you decide, even if it doesn't benefit me, even if I don't like it, even if I think you're doing the wrong thing, a supportive person says, I will love you and I will walk with you. And that gives us freedom. Like, those three things give us that helps us to live more freely. So so in my own decision, it was like I surrounded myself with people like that who helped me to listen to my own soul, to listen to my experience. And I asked this question, what leads to healing? Like, what does that look like? And for me, the answer was to walk away from both. Healing in my life looked like leaving my marriage and leaving my job.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think it also adds weight to your expertise here, because those are some very serious decisions. And to hear the space that you came from and what it was that you needed to process to be able to make those decisions is really powerful. And there's something I was thinking of a moment ago. What leads to more healing? That really sticks out to me. But there's also, it's interesting because this idea of the supportive listener or the supportive friend, I realize a lot of what you're talking about, I mean, I work as a transformational coach. That's my life calling. It's what I'm in service to. And everything you've said is what coaches get trained in. And it's almost a shame. It's like we would be out of work if we'd all been taught properly as children how to be supportive of one another. And imagine in school if there was a class on open-ended questions and on curiosity as like the best way to support each other. And I find it one of the most powerful, unexpected things that my clients often experience is that within the first few sessions, they have some kind of an emotional release simply because they're being heard and reflected. That there's all the other stuff we do. We do work on purpose and blocks and all these other wonderful things that we go through. But the actual foundational, the moment they realize that they're in a container that is safe enough that they can say anything they need to say, and all that will happen is that they will have that reflected and held and honored, it's just like, oh my gosh, this feels amazing. So everything you said there was reminding me of those moments of realization, like, oh my gosh, I can just be heard. What a crazy feeling. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very powerful. And in terms of, I mean, I know there's a whole book's worth of great information here. So you mentioned the morning routine, the morning piece about decision making, and morning routines are something I've got a bit of a personal, I don't know, I love them. I think morning routines there's a beautiful saying, I don't know the full saying, but Annie Dillard said that how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And there's a lot more to that talks about having a plan, and that creates the scaffolding, etc. But then I thought about that and I thought, okay, well, how I spend my day is how I spend my life. How I spend my days is how I spend my life. How I spend my mornings is very often how I spend my day. It's kind of one leads in. If I wake up and I'm straight onto my phone and I'm just like a bit groggy and I'm all over the place, that's probably how my day is going to go. Distracted, overwhelmed, a little edgy. Whereas if I start my day with that first decision being to sit at my altar and to pray and to do some breathing and stretch my body and journal about what's coming up for me and maybe look at a decision I'm needing to make, then the rest of my day has generally, not always, of course things can change in either direction, but generally I give myself more of a chance of making better decisions throughout the day. I'm not sure if that's something that you think about at all, but I just love that thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. If I start my day from a place of like, what's my intention for the day? Gratitude. I mean, every morning I write a gratitude list and I literally thank God and the universe for each one of these things. I did it this morning before, at 6:45 before coming on here. There's a way of starting your day that starts it from this place of listen. I mean, that's the thing. This is listening to your soul, listening to others, listening to God, to the universe. It's a practice that we cultivate over time. It doesn't just happen one day. It's an action, just like playing the piano. It's this, thing that we cultivate in our life and we get better and better at it. But that attention starts with that attention every single morning, I think. And then we can go into our day looking, I always say when I'm talking about joy that we all walk around with flashlights, and so we start our day with this flashlight, and the question is like, what are you putting your flashlight on? What are you shining a light on? And whatever you're shining light on, that's what you're going to see. That's what's going to be illuminated for you. And if you're shining your light on anger, on fear, on resentment, that's what you're going to notice throughout your day. And I think one of the most powerful things that I realized in the decision-making process is this idea of synchronicity. Carl Jung, the psychologist, talks about it. But for me, I realized that when I'm making a difficult decision, that oftentimes the same things show up in different places. Maybe in a conversation with someone, in a text that I'm reading, any number of ways. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I need to pay attention to this thing. I'm being guided. I didn't even realize it, but I'm noticing this and I'm realizing, oh, I I am, this is a way that I need to change. This is something I need to let go of. This is something I need to pursue. This is a value I need to cultivate, you know? And so I think when we are attentive and we start that in the mornings, that things do show up and show us the way. One way that this happened for me was I felt very led during my decision-making process of trying to figure out if I should leave my job or not, to meditate on two different texts. And one was this quote by Howard Thurman, who is a civil rights activist. He actually was a mentor to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who led the civil rights movement in the United States. And Howard Thurman said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, right? And go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And then the other thing that I felt led to meditate on for these months was a poem called Sweet Darkness by David White, Whyte. And David, in this poem, he says, anything or anyone that does not make you come alive is too small for you. And actually, he says in the poem too, the world was made to be free in. Give up on all other worlds except the one to which you belong. And then he says, anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. And so I had this sense that I was being invited to really meditate on this idea of being brought to light, of coming alive. What does that mean for you, Angela, as I was making this decision? So I'm meditating on these things. I'm reading them constantly. I share them with my students as a professor in class, right? Then I go listen to someone named Richard Rohr. He's one of my favorite writers of all time. I had a meeting with him in his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, you know, it's so fun to meet your heroes. Mostly, you always hope that they're going to be who you hope they are or who you imagine them to be. He is precisely who you would hope he is. Richard Rohr is an amazing, not only amazing writer, but an amazing human. So I go sit with him in his living room. We're talking, and I look up on the wall. We're talking about, I'm trying to figure out if I should leave my job, right? I look up on the wall, and there is a painting of Howard Thurman's quote. And like, there it is in all of its glory, right? I say to Richard, oh my goodness. I tell him what I've been doing. I've been meditating on this quote, right? And then he says to me, he says, I get sent artwork from around the world. I feel so blessed by people just sending me gifts, because he has changed so many people's lives with his writing, right? And he's like, at this point, you know, he's in older age, right? And so people they should send him gifts from around the world. He said, my team switches out the artwork in my living room every few weeks for me. Angela, this is here just for you. I'm like weeping on his couch. I cannot believe this. Then the next week, I get an email from a random person that I don't know very well. And she says, I've been reading my second book, The Gravity of Joy, and I've integrated some of it into chapter 1, and I wanted to share it with you. I said, oh, great, you know. So then I'm reading it. And at the very top of this chapter is this little quote. You know how people like to start, I love to start a chapter with a little quote from someone else. And this little quote, anyone or anything that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Woo! I'm like, okay, universe is talking to me, you know? And so if we start our day with this intention, if we think about our flashlight, the world talks to us.
Whew, that is all a tingle, I find myself after those stories. That's great. My word. And it's honestly those moments that have, like those moments of magic and synchronicity, what you've just shared there, are the moments that have at times saved my life, because they have showed me that even in the darkness, when I was like, well, life is just this gray, dull thing that I'm just not meant to be a part of, and I should get out of here as quickly as possible. And then those moments of magic is like, no, hang on. Magic is actually real, and it's happening right now. I think I need to stick around and see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been there too. Absolutely.
Wow, that is so awesome. Oh my gosh. That is a great story. Sure. Okay. Well, I can't believe time has absolutely flown. And
Yeah.
oh man. Okay, I'm going to tell one story because the synchronicity thing is so cool. It's one of my favorite things about life when it happens. So and I'm really going to keep this as brief as possible because there's obviously a whole story here. But through my own challenges as a young person, one of the defense mechanisms or one of the strategies I used to try and feel better about myself was to become a player, to become someone who was skilled in the art of hooking up with women, basically. It's a terrible term. It's a not nice way to say it, but I can't think of a better way to say it. And it wasn't coming from a good place. And so eventually life, as it does, showed me very clearly how much harm I was causing when I did a 10-day Vipassana meditation. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. So I decided to go on a period of celibacy to actually really just, for the first time, I was in my mid-20s. So like mid-20s, young dude decides to be celibate. And of course was tested immediately in many ways. But at one point, I ended up staying in this little cottage in the woods up in Northern California, funnily enough, near Nevada City. And I was there's all these things that happened, but I ended up on a bed with this woman where there was like some potential of something. And I was like, look, you are so beautiful, but I cannot do this right now. This is what I need for me. And through that experience, she then hand wrote a poem when she went home and gave it to a friend to give to me. And it was a poem by Hafiz, the Sufi poet, that has become, that poem led me to the book, The Subject Tonight is Love, which led me to reconnect with God in a way that I had never been able to since I was a kid. And so that was one piece. The other piece is that I was navigating, obviously at that time, re-empowering myself and my sexuality. I was taking responsibility for myself as a man, as a responsible human, and I was doing my best to show up in a different way. And the one day I put on a pair of shorts, of trousers, and I felt in the pocket, and there was this little stone, this like almost like an egg that was brown and white, brown on one side, white on the other. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. So I asked my friend, it's her land, her community that there's a part of, and I showed it to her. I said, do you know what this is? She said, yeah, that's a Shiva Lingam. And I was like, oh, what now? And she said, no, you need to look it up. So pulled out this book of precious stones. And it turns out it's a stone from one of the rivers in India that represents empowered sexuality, basically. And I was going like, where did this stone come from? How did it end up in my pocket? What the hell happened here? So crazily enough, but I actually got, I think, the answer eventually, which is that I was house sitting someone's room. And when that woman came back to return from her trip, I showed her the stone. I said, have you seen this before? She said, yeah, that's mine. And I was like, it was in the pocket of my trousers. And could it have been in the washing machine when I was washing? And I worked out. I had washed my clothes and I'd hung them on a line inside the house because it was snowing outside above one of her like countertops. And when I took stuff off the line, the trousers had dropped onto that countertop and somehow this stone had jumped into the pocket just to remind me that I was taking control. I was taking responsibility for my sexuality and I was healing my sexuality. I mean, come on.
That's so beautiful and cool. That's amazing.
It's so cool. Yes. So cool. So I love this. I love that making difficult decisions is actually not about the decision. It's about how does this support me in returning or moving towards wholeness. And that as I return to wholeness, the universe is here to give me the signs to remind me that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm going in the right direction. So thank you. I mean, what a great thing to share.
Thank you. The book is a journey from stirring to sated joy. And so every chapter is an S. But and what I say at the end is, and at the beginning and the end, is that maybe this journey is not even so much about exactly what to do, but about preparing you to be the kind of person who can do whatever this is. And so it's really about, that's why each part, there's surrender, there's shedding, there's summoning the stories from our past. So there's each step along the way, which also might look like, so it could just look like change within, but it could look like being the kind of person who can make a good decision that doesn't feel good. It could look like being the kind of person who has to break your own heart in order to keep moving toward healing ultimately. And so it's about, I think preparing your soul's landscape for the next faithful step in your life.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else, and it doesn't have to be, we've covered some beautiful ground, but is there anything that you haven't said yet that you would really love our listeners to walk away with as we come towards the end today?
One of the chapters is called Sensing. And so this chapter is dedicated to working constructively through difficult emotions. And so I do want to say to listeners that there might be some difficult emotions that are blocking your ability to listen to others, to God, to your own soul, to this, what you need to do. And this, I think some of the prominent ones are grief, like a lament, just a deep sorrow that you're carrying, fear or anger. And it's very difficult to know what to do when we're really mad, when we're really sad, or when we're really scared. And so I have in the book the 6 E's of emotion. And so I'll just run through them really quickly. But then I also have very specifically how to work through those 3 difficult emotions using the 6 E's. So the first E is emotion. My therapist says that all emotions are energy in motion. And so you have this energy that you need to first attend to. Before you can really work constructively through an emotion, you have to release that energy. So if you feel it in your chest, you can hum. If you feel it in your chest, you can grunt. That's the best way, like, ah, and like really letting it out. If you feel it in your stomach, you can hum, like several times over these things. You can obviously take a jog. You could play some music and shake or dance it out. You can do breath work. So first, you just want to try, you can do some gentle stretches and massage your feet and hands, so some way of just when you feel an emotion coming up in you that's really strong is getting that energy out in some way. And then the next is express. And that is express this emotion to God, to a friend, to both. And just like, this is how I'm feeling. Like, the second one is exact. So you have emotion, get it out, energy and motion. The next is exact. And you can get a feelings wheel online. You can literally Google feelings wheel. It will help you to get as exact as possible on what you're feeling. Instead of saying, I feel mad, it could be, I feel betrayed, or I feel unseen, like neglected. Those are different emotions, right? And so you're trying to get as exact as possible. Then express, God, I feel betrayed. To this friend, I feel neglected by this situation, by this group, by this person. So you're expressing it, you're sharing it. The next is to explore. As best you can, you're trying to imagine that you're a fly on the wall to this situation, to the story, to the experience that you've had. Be an investigator and an observer. Like, what really happened? Explore what happened. This happened and it created this emotion for me, and then I'm feeling this, right? And really, and so just trying to explain to yourself, explore what happened. The fifth one is evaluate. Is there another way to look at what is happening? For example, is this more trauma? Am I looking at the present through the past? Am I making this situation, am I taking things personally when I shouldn't have? Is this, a situation bigger than me? Is it, so evaluate. Is there another way to look at the story? And the answer might be, no, this is the way this is how what happened. And this was hard and that's it. And then the final thing is examine. What insight can I gain? Does something need to change? Do I need something I can give myself? Do I need a boundary? Do I need some rest? Do I need to stop and get off social media? Or is there something that someone else can give me? Freedom, an apology, more space to figure, whatever it is. So the 6 E's of emotion, I think, can be really helpful when you're trying to kind of clear the way to do the listening that we've been talking about.
Thank you. That's super helpful. And you're reminding me of one of the threads I've noticed throughout this that I wanted to mention, which is somatic work. I'm actually in the process of becoming a certified body-based breakthrough somatic coach. And it's just been such a revelation because of exactly what you're talking about. So much of the stuff I've already been bringing in intuitively with clients and with myself, but it's really bringing it together in a cohesive way that I can offer a process. And what you just described there it's all interwoven within that. It's all about that. It's so beautiful. So I really appreciate it. And while I remember, as someone who appreciates poetry, I have another verse for you, because you said something about emotion. And well, you said a lot about emotion, but that what you just said about energy and motion, I have a verse from a song that is about the fact that we're all going to get cracked open by life at some point, and that there's no way to avoid that. And that when that happens, to whoever's listening to this out there, whenever that happens, just know that I still want to be here with you. That like I am with you. I want to be with you through the whole thing. And the song is called Sway With Me. And it's this idea of like, let's just keep swaying together through whether you're laughing or crying or whatever it is. And so I'll just speak the first verse to you, because I know that you will get it. Someday life will crack you open, overflow emotion, and the dam flood waters will burst. Don't flee the flood, it seeks the ocean. Every motion is a sign of your beautiful thirst. Thought you would resonate with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's such a pleasure. And I would love to just know, I mean, obviously the book, but is there anything that you want people to know about in terms of current projects, or where they should find you, or like what's the most current thing that you'd love people to get in touch with after this?
Yeah. You can find me at my website, www.angelagorrell.com, and that's 2 R's and 2 L's. So if you want to reach out to me, you can message me there. I also am on Instagram at Angela Gorrell, and so we could be friends together. You can DM me there. I give talks online and in person about braving difficult decisions, and do retreats and workshops related to it, both online and in person. And I also do life worth living retreats with people. And so that was a class I taught at Yale University, and still do life worth living in a variety of ways. It's connected to braving difficult decisions as well. So if you want to do life worth living retreats, or you want to do a braving difficult decisions workshop or something, or you just want to reach out to me about something else, like, please do. That would be awesome. And you can listen to my podcast too, More Human with Dr. Angela, on Spotify or YouTube. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll put as much of that as I can in the show notes, which will probably be all of it. But yeah, if you just want to go through and click some links, which I do suggest you do, then go ahead and do that, dear listeners. And for you, Angela, again, thank you for being here. And I only have one more question, which is, when you hear "we are already free," what comes up for you?
Well, first, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you. I do feel that, you find when, I am a misfit as well. When I read the description of this podcast, I'm like, he's my kind of people. And I imagine all of you listeners, you're our kind of people. And so it's been awesome to talk with you. When I hear that phrase, I think it comes back to love for me. I think we're all free when we breathe in love and when we breathe it out. Yeah, I think that we experience release in both of those things, and especially as we move throughout our days and our lives, that's when we feel the most free, and when we free other people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being on the podcast. I wish you all the best going forward, and thank you for the beautiful offerings of your work. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to all you listeners too.
Thank you. All right, dear humans, Dr. Angela Gorrell, phenomenal. I truly believe this is one of those episodes that every person needs to listen to, because how many of us are stuck in making difficult decisions, frozen in a state of fear, or stuck in some way where we're like, if I do the wrong thing like I did before, then it's all going to get even worse. And what a beautiful invitation to reframe that into a realignment with wholeness. What is it that makes me most whole? What is it that brings me closer to love, to peace, to connection, to who I really am, to who I came here to be, so that then the decision is made from that place. What a different world we can live in if that becomes the motivation for our decision making, for the way we question ourselves and the way we question the actions we take. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much again to Dr. Gorrell. And if you haven't yet and you're watching this live or on YouTube, please do like, subscribe, turn on notifications, do all those wonderful things. And if you are like so many of us, you probably spend a little more time than you would like doom scrolling the stuff that you really shouldn't be. And when I say shouldn't be, it's the stuff that takes you away from sitting with yourself, for creating space in your life, for starting your mornings with peace, calm, connection, and good decision making. So if that sounds like you and you want to make a shift, please sign up for my free 21-day dopamine detox challenge. Just go to alreadyfree.me/reset or visit the link in the show notes. People who've gone through this have had phenomenal results. I kid you not. Increased creativity, connections to family, connections to friend, connection to self, more joy in life, more time in nature. Really, it is not complicated. It is simple, and all you need is a guided process that the 21-day challenge offers. So please do check that out. And either way, you're freaking amazing. You are free to do whatever you choose to do. Make the best decisions you can from the place you're in now. Forgive yourself for the past and come back into this moment. And as always, remember that we are already free. It's a blessing to be here with you. Thank you so much. I will see you next week. For now, I fare thee well. Thanks again. Nathan Maingard checking out. Ciao for now.